So it says we're live, so we must be live. I think isn't that the like prerequisite for any LinkedIn live video where you're like, are we live? I don't know if we are live. What's going on here? But it looks like we are. So welcome along to the FFS tea break. We've had a lot of debates in the background here about whether we should give it its full title or be polite since we're on LinkedIn. But we're excited to have you as we experiment with our LinkedIn liveness. So what's today about? Well, basically, what Cara and I talk a lot about is how you keep yourself sane in culture change. And I think it's the same across all HR stuff. We all have those moments where we're FFSing all over the place. And I think the only way to keep ourselves productive and effective is by making sure we don't get stuck in those, whether it's letting our anger stop us from really being able to influence things, because what we have seen is mad and it shouldn't happen, but we've got to be able to process it and get over it to be able to influence it, or to stop it defeating us as well, because I'm sure we've all had those moments where we're like, I can't go round this merry-go-round again. So we just thought that this would be a nice thing to do, not to just moan and rant all the time. Obviously, we love a bit of that, but to talk about some of the moments that we and our guests over the next few weeks have had that have felt like real kind of deal breaker moments for them and how they've processed them. Before I go on, though, I'm going to get Cara to introduce herself and I'll do the same. Cara, who are you and what's the terrible thing you want to tell us about yourself? I don't mean that. It's all right. You haven't watched The Sound of Music. Did I ruin it?
Hello everyone. So I'm Cara. I am a business psychologist and a self-confessed culture nerd alongside Paula, doing this because I'll save that, shall I, for my story, because you'll hear a personal frustration of mine. And like Paula's completely dobbed me in there because we were talking behind the scenes about like a fun note that we were going to share about ourselves, and I was wondering whether I would share the confession that always divides a room one way or another, that I've never seen The Sound of Music, but there I've said it now. It's out in public for everybody to know about myself. So
it makes me like you better. If I'm completely honest, it makes me like you better.
I mean, that works. I mean, the fact you shared back that you'd also not seen it. See, I've dobbed you in now as well. That
what? And listen, well, as I said to you, I'd watch Calamity Jane over The Sound of Music all day, every day. I don't care. The songs are better, I'd suggest. So, and an easier range that you can work within, but who knows? Well, and to introduce myself, I'm Paula Brockwell. I'm the founder of the Employee Experience Project, bona fide culture nerd, and occupational psychologist. I'm just a bit obsessed with this stuff, if I'm completely honest. If The Sound of Music had some stuff about culture in it, then I definitely would have watched it. But yeah. And not for me, I don't think. We'll see. The hills can be alive with whatever they fancy today. But right. Anyway, shall we get focused, because we can't cut these bits out, Cara, like we can in other bits of life. So we've got to try and keep me on track. What we thought we'd do today is just introduce ourselves, introduce some of our own FFS moments that we've experienced over the years, and also set ourselves up to talk to you about kind of what's happening in the weeks to come, because we've got some guests joining us to share their experience as well. So you haven't just got us ranting on things. So I just see in the chat that we're in good company, because Anwin has never seen The Sound of Music either. Danny's saying that there are two of his favourites. I assume he means the films, but I'm going to assume that he means us, because why not? It's a Monday, and who doesn't want a bit of Danny Wareham love, especially given that he's going to be a published author in a count time. What is it? 7 days time now. Pre-orders on Amazon if anybody's interested. I've ordered mine today, so get yourself in there. So,
although I think I saw something earlier that there's maybe a version of it might actually be out already. Amazon did a whoopsie, I think. So depending on which version you want, he's
ordered mine then, so it might be
already a published author. Yes.
Nice. Well, let's chat then. You tell me. I'd love to hear one of the moments that happens in your professional life, or has happened, Cara, that just makes you go FFS and you've had to work through. What's a big one for you?
Yeah, so I'm going to affectionately call it the resilience plaster. People that follow me on LinkedIn will have possibly seen me post about this more than once anyway, but there is a particular, this is a kind of previous experience of a place that I was working at, when you have a team or a department, or in reality for me at this point, an entire organisation that is so completely overloaded, and the organisational response to that is to roll out some personal resilience training in the form of well-being training, some kind of well-being workshop, or I think it was lunchtime yoga sessions.
It wasn't me who delivered those, was it? That was a part of my job in a previous life, let's be honest.
And yeah, some online personal resilience training, rather than maybe looking to tackle the overload, the overwhelm, the overcommit in the strategic planning and the business plan.
It's problematic, isn't it? It's funny you say that, because I'm sure I've said to you in the past, but I nearly left consultancy after my stint within wellbeing consultancy, because I do think, I'm not saying every provider at all, but I think a large proportion of the market has been set up to give organizations a chance to tick the box that says our people are broken rather than our system is broken. And as a consultant and a practitioner, that is so hard to operate within, because the system is broken and you're trying to do whatever you can to help people. But honestly, I would come home most days exhausted, because I feel like I was bandaging people up and sending them back into war. And it's like the war hasn't changed. The bombs are still going off. The landmines are still all around them. And here's me with my little plaster that I'm just popping over going, come on, guys, you can do this. And yeah, it's not a long-term solution, is it? And if anything, it blames the individuals for their capacity to cope, rather than really exploring what's going on underneath everything.
Yeah, complete. And for me, it drives this, I think, really unhelpful framing of resilience as a dirty word. And actually, it's really fundamental to harness organisational resilience. And I think, I can think of times when we've talked to clients about that, because you get this real visceral reaction sometimes to sharing the word resilience, but actually it's so fundamental. There are always going to be sticky moments within a business, but people need to know that they've got the systems, the tools, the processes, the leadership behaviours, that whole wider system around them that supports them to be resilient in the times that they need it. And that, yes, that might look like some mindfulness stuff that sits on the edges of that, but it's the fundamental piece that allows them to work in the way that they need to work, even when things get stretched or a bit sticky.
Yeah, totally. And it's funny, actually, Anwen is just commented saying that totally resonates with her, that she nearly lost it previously on some resilience training that's saying, working specifically on improve your network. Oh God, Anwen, I definitely designed that training. I know exactly what that was. Instead of how do I actually improve my workload, because that's the issue. And I think the other thing that really I struggle with is not only are we not focusing on the right thing, but exactly what Anwen's just said there. I think we undermine people's energy levels and capacity to cope, because we show them that we don't care. By doing that, we make people feel really trapped and unheard, and that actively kind of decreases their capacity to cope, because they're ending up in a really problematic environment, really. So yeah, absolutely. I think I understand that as an FFS moment, and it is absolutely kicking off in the chat, so I can see that it's that. Leanne's used at least 5 exclamation marks, so she's definitely connecting with it for sure.
Yeah,
and Daly, it's fine. I get that you're saying that Leanne and Anwen are your favourite. They're mine too. I've got, listen, no beef on that. That's grand. Cool. Okay.
I'm not even offended by that.
So my FFS moment then. So one of the ones that I have far too regularly, but it's now one of my favourite ones, because it feels like an influencing moment for me, is when I end up in rooms with chief executives who tell me that they're really annoyed that no one takes personal responsibility. But when you look at how they're engaging with their executives in the room, when you look at the systems and processes around the organisation, they've created this environment, consciously or not, of an absolute chokehold around the organisation that drives no capacity for people to take personal responsibility, because there's no mechanism that allows people to do that. they've actively suppressed the talent and experience that people need to be able to make more senior decisions or take responsibility for stuff, and they're driving systems and processes that stop it from happening. But what I find is that a really lovely question to ask whenever somebody's moaning about that, and I can see all those systemic things, is I just ask them how happy they are about the type of papers that they need to sign off at board. And when they say, oh, they're rubbish and they're always really tactical and they're this and they're that and they're that, I then ask them, well, what work have you done to improve those? So what percentage of those do you send back into the organisation with feedback and asking for something different, or refusing to make the decision on? Or what work have you done to redefine that board submission process and the quality of work that happens? And that generally creates a bit of a stunned and irritated silence that allows me to then have a conversation about that kind of, in the same way as you talked about resilience. I think any cultural outcome, whether it's resilience, whether it's personal responsibility, individual well-being or behavioural outcome, it's always caught in a system, isn't it? And I think the more that we can point out that system to help people, the better, really. Danny's saying about resilience training simply being victim blaming, it's caught my eye. I totally agree, Danny. That's why I couldn't work with well-being anymore. I nearly had a breakdown myself trying to do it because it's horrible, really horrible for sure. But I think I'm interested for those of you in the chat as well as your review, Cara, but I think a lot of culture work actually focuses on why are they not doing what they need to do, when in fact the most functional question is, why is this system not encouraging the behaviour that we need from people to drive our business results? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, completely agree, completely. And it's and I think if I was to create my origin story, I think that's for me what really triggered me into wanting to work in this space, because it's not about blame and it's not about putting everything on the shoulders of the individual. You are only going to be able to act, behave, operate, be as good as you can be with the system that surrounds you, with the tools that you have, with the resources that you have, with the leadership and management that you have, that enables you to behave in a certain way, deliver your work in a certain way. And that's the fundamental moment, isn't it? Like you've described there, being able to have that conversation, that can be that magic light bulb moment, that those conversations you can have with people when you turn that around and you turn that question back on somebody and ask about what are you doing? What are you doing to change that behaviour? How are you enabling that to happen differently?
Yeah. And there's loads of light bulb moments. Like Phil's just said in the chat about how that example that I've used, that often the SLT will even usually understand the paper. And there's like a really pragmatic, true point to that, isn't there? That actually, if something is an operational piece of work and it's sitting 3 or 4 layers below SLT, if they're trying to sign it off, they don't have a fighting chance of understanding the operational nuances of that thing. And actually what they'll probably do is create a load of extra work and like misdirection to move people, because they're basing it on their understanding from the 52 years ago that they did that job, or they never have done, or they're seeking more information to be able to understand that, which just creates an industry of justifying to the SLT rather than allowing the right parts of the system to run what's needed, moving things forward. Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, and an SLT feeling like they need to do something with it, it's come to them, so they need to act, they should be acting, but that then triggering this really unhelpful feedback loop, because there is that lack of understanding that the things that they then kind of feed into and push into aren't taking it where it needs to be. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And again, there's a few more comments in the chat from Anne and Leanne about this piece around helping leaders connect culture to the operations and systems. I think for both of the pieces that we're talking about here, how do you move through these moments? I think sometimes you've got to break the system a bit. As practitioners, where execs succeed in getting us to just tick off the resilience training or do that goal setting piece to improve personal responsibility is where we get too tired, or we feel too scared perhaps, or too eager to just be able to do something to have that base conversation. And I think we've got to keep pulling things back to, but what are we trying to achieve, and will this actually deliver what we need to achieve? and being the asshole in the room sometimes that the room needs you to be. Because if we're all saying yes, and I don't mean that from any sort of unprofessionalism, I think as HR professionals, sometimes we feel so lucky to be invited to the table to do something, and we are so keen to see the gap that we will try anything, but there's a risk that we become the sticking plaster and we enable that sick system to continue because we've ticked that resilience training's been done, so we don't have to look at workload or whatever. And we've got to do something to kind of shift that conversation, really. That would probably be my takeaway from our conversation today. What about for you? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. But I think on that, there's a recognition piece, isn't there, that it can be really hard to be that person in the room who's who's starting the difficult conversation, particularly if you're operating, because I think the cultures that we're talking about here are these cultures where it's you said, we did, kind of, let's do a thing to fix, and they're not necessarily the cultures that are nurturing those hard conversations or those difficult conversations. So to be the one in the room to front that and own that can be a hard place to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, you know, it's risky, isn't it? It can be limiting, etc. I think the challenge for us is about making sure that we don't get stuck. Like for me in that wellbeing consultancy job, I was there for 4.5 years, and I wasn't emotionally well. Within about 12 months, I realized what was going on and I wasn't going to be able to change it. And I wasn't well through that period because I knew that I wasn't making a difference. And I think sometimes we stay too long in situations where we think we might be able to shift things, and we've got to have that revolution of caring for ourselves and what this is doing up to us as much as we do for other people, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree.
Cool. Well, as we expected, we've chatted on for over 16 minutes, soon to be 17 when we said it would be a short 15 minutes. But thank you so much for joining us for our first session. We're going to do this weekly through the autumn to try and bring a bit of sunshine as all the leaves disappear and we lose our access to natural light. We've got lots of guests lined up, so keep an eye and we'll be in touch to let you know about the next session. But thanks for joining us.